My name is Michael Thompson. I have spent the last 20 years protecting the royal family's darkest secrets. Today, weighed down by my conscience, I believe the time has come to reveal what really happened that night in Paris. This story will disturb you, but the world deserves to know the truth. On that August night in 1997, I was a special duty guard at Windsor Castle. I was 26 years old and believed I was serving the royal family with loyalty. Up until then, I had thought everything I had seen was just routine protocol. How wrong I was. Later that night, I received an unusual call. My superior, Colonel James Harrison, was summoning me urgently to a private meeting room. In the room were not only him, but 3 other men I had never seen before. They were all dressed in dark suits, with cold, steely eyes. One of them spoke with an American accent. "Thompson," he said, "you will be assigned a very special task tonight. You must never mention what you see or hear to anyone. This is a matter of national security." Harrison handed me a file. It had red seals on it and was stamped top secret. When I opened the file, it contained photos of Diana, medical reports, and strange genetic analyses. The most surprising thing was the results of the pregnancy tests. "Princess Diana is pregnant," the American continued. "However, this pregnancy is unacceptable to the royal family. The child's father is Dodi Al-Fayed. This situation is breaking a centuries-old agreement." At the time, I didn't understand what he meant. What agreement? Why was something like this so important? Harrison pulled another document out of the file. This document looked very old, with symbols I didn't understand on it. "Thompson, the royal family is not just a governing body. They are the guardians of an ancient pact. This pact was made with the true rulers of our world. Royal blood is the genetic key that ensures the continuation of this pact. Diana's pregnancy is disrupting this key system." The American man pointed to a map on the table. The Alma Tunnel in Paris was marked. "Diana and Dodi will be in Paris tonight. We need to stop them. It must look like an accident." My stomach churned. Are you planning a murder?" I asked. Harrison's face was as cold as ice. "This isn't murder, Thompson. This is harvesting. Diana is an asset, a resource. And that resource has been contaminated. It needs to be cleaned up." One of the other men in the room unfolded a large map. It showed detailed plans of the Alma Tunnel. The 13th concrete pillar was marked specifically. "This point is special," he said. "In ancient times, rituals were performed here for the moon goddess. It's a point of high energy density, perfect for the harvest." My head was spinning. These men were talking about Diana as if she weren't human, as if she were just an object, a mathematical equation to be solved. "Your task," the American continued, "is to ensure that events unfold as planned. You will coordinate with our team in Paris. You will make sure that Henri Paul, the driver, is drunk and that the paparazzi are aggressive enough." They gave me a phone. "There's only one number on this phone. You'll call when necessary.
After everything is over, you'll act as if this mission never happened. Do you understand?
I nodded, but I was trembling inside. These men's power and authority were so great that I couldn't even think of resisting. I was just a guard. They, on the other hand, seemed like representatives of a secret organization that ruled the entire world. That night, I flew to Paris. The man who met me at the airport introduced himself simply as Jean. He had a French accent but spoke English perfectly. He took me directly to the Ritz Hotel. "This is where everything will begin tonight," he said. "Diana and Dodi will be here for dinner. Our job is to guide them to the tunnel." While waiting in the hotel lobby, I saw Diana. She was very beautiful, but there was a tired expression on her face. She looked as though she were carrying a heavy burden. At that moment, knowing that I was part of the plan leading to her death was tearing me apart inside. After leaving the Ritz Hotel, Jean took me through the dark streets of the city to the Alma Tunnel. It was after midnight, and the tunnel was almost empty. However, there was some very interesting activity going on there. Inside the tunnel, several men dressed in work clothes were working, but these were no ordinary workers. Their movements were very disciplined and professional. They were also part of this operation. "Michael," Jean said, "these men are preparing the special points in the tunnel. Do you see those metal particles around the 13th pillar?" I looked. There were indeed strange pieces around the pillar that didn't look normal, but had a metallic sheen. "What are these?" I asked. "These are, let's say, special materials that ensure the crash is definitive. When Diana's vehicle hits this pillar, the damage will be maximum." Jean's voice was cold and calculated. One of them approached the pole with a strange device in his hand. When he aimed the device at the pole, it emitted a very faint light. "What's that?" I asked. "An energy concentrator," Jean replied. "This spot is already special, but tonight it will be even more special. When Diana's blood mixes with the soil, the pact will be renewed." My stomach churned. These people were talking about Diana as if she was some kind of victim. "What is the pact?" I asked. "Everyone is talking about the pact, but what is it?" Jean stopped and turned to me. His eyes glowed in the darkness. "Michael, you are still very young and inexperienced, but it is time for you to learn. Royal families, even world leaders, are actually representatives. The real power lies behind them." He leaned against the tunnel wall. "Thousands of years ago, visitors from another species came to Earth. They were more advanced, more powerful than us, but they couldn't physically live here. So they made a deal with us." "What kind of agreement?" "They gave us technology, science, and power. In exchange, certain bloodlines would continue to carry their genetic code. Royal families are the purest of these bloodlines. Through them, these beings continue to rule the world." This sounded absurd, but the technical preparations I saw around me, the professionalism of the men, how everything was so organized. Maybe it was true. "So, what's Diana's problem?" Jean took a deep breath. "Diana Spencer's family is very old English nobility. They also have these special genetic codes in their blood. When Diana married Charles, it was a perfect genetic mix. William and Harry are the products of that mix. But now Diana is with Dodi Al-Fayed, and she's pregnant. This child will not carry royal blood. He will be an ordinary person. Worse still, Diana's move shows that she does not recognize the pact. One of the men came over to us and whispered something to Jean. Jean nodded. The preparations are complete. Now we just have to wait."
As we exited the tunnel, Jean gave me final instructions. "Michael, stay on standby tonight. We'll call you when the operation begins. You'll also make sure Henri Paul is intoxicated."
When I returned to the hotel, I found Henri Paul. Paul, the Ritz's security manager, was going to take Diana and Dodie out of the hotel that night. I approached him. "Henri, you have a very important job tonight. Everything must be perfect." Paul looked at me. There was a strange gleam in his eyes. "Everything is going according to plan," he said. "I had a few drinks, but it's no problem. I can drive the car." At that moment, I realized that Paul was also involved in this. Perhaps he had been part of this organization for years. Alcohol would only be an excuse to explain the accident later. As the night progressed, a terrifying reality began to take shape in my mind. This operation wasn't just an assassination. It was a mechanism of an ancient system protecting itself. And I found myself, unwillingly, caught between the gears of that mechanism.
I was sitting in a luxurious lobby of the Ritz Hotel, watching Princess Diana and Dodi Al-Fayed. While they were enjoying their dinner, I was preparing to be part of a murder. Diana's smile looked so natural, so innocent, that the thought of causing her death was driving me crazy. My phone rang. It was Jean. "Jean, timing is crucial. Diana and Dodi will be leaving the hotel in half an hour. The paparazzi are already in position. You check on Henri Paul's status." I went to the hotel's security room to find Paul. He was sitting there in front of the computer screens. The screens showed images from various parts of the hotel, but he was only watching Diana's room. "Henri, how are you?" I asked. His voice was trembling. "I'm fine. Tonight will be a very special night." He took a sip from the glass in his hand. He smelled of alcohol, but his eyes were very clear. It was as if the alcohol had no effect on him. "How long have you been doing this?" I asked. Paul turned to me. "Which job? Driving? Or my real job?" This question surprised me. "What is your actual job?" "I am an observer, Michael. I have been watching the royal family for years. I report on their every move, every relationship, every medical condition. From the moment Diana became pregnant, we were preparing for tonight." He pulled a file from his desk. It contained photos of Diana, but these weren't ordinary paparazzi photos. They were taken during medical examinations, ultrasound images, blood test results. "What's this file?" I asked. "Data collected throughout Diana's pregnancy. The baby has fully human characteristics. There are no special genetic markers. This is unacceptable from the pact's perspective." While flipping through the file, I came across a document. It was labeled Spencer Family Genetic Analysis. Diana's genetic traits from her mother's side had been analyzed in detail. "The Spencer family is very old," Paul continued. "They come from the indigenous people of England. The royal family, on the other hand, has a more complex genetic mix. When the two come together, a very powerful hybrid is formed." "William and Harry? Yes, they are perfect examples. But Diana is now trying to step outside this system. This is unacceptable." My phone rang again. This time, it was an unknown number. "Thompson," said an unfamiliar voice. It had an American accent. "The operation is starting. Diana and Dodi will be leaving the hotel in 10 minutes.
Take your position." I went to the front entrance of the hotel. There were dozens of paparazzi waiting outside, but among them were men who looked different from the usual paparazzi. They were very disciplined and organized in their movements. When Diana and Dodi left the hotel, the flashes started going off. But it wasn't just flashes. There were also very powerful spotlights among them. Diana's eyes were dazzled, as if she was surprised. Henri Paul got into the car. The Mercedes was black and looked very luxurious. But I noticed that the tires were a bit different. They were brighter, as if made of a special material. When the car started moving, the paparazzi motorcycles began to follow it. But this wasn't a normal chase. The motorcycles surrounded the car and began to guide it along a specific route. I got into the car assigned to me for the chase. I was watching Diana's car from a distance. As we drove through the city streets, I noticed that the traffic lights were synchronized in a very unusual way. It was as if they were guiding Diana's car to a specific location.
Jean's voice came over the radio. "Michael, we're approaching the Alma Tunnel. Get ready." As we approached the tunnel entrance, I saw Diana's car speeding along. Henri Paul was driving like a madman. But what was very strange was that the paparazzi motorcycles slowed down before entering the tunnel. It was as if they knew what was going to happen. I entered the tunnel. It was very dark inside, but there was a faint light around the 13th pillar. The metallic pieces that had been prepared that night were now emitting a very weak light. When I saw Diana's car, my heart stopped. The car had lost control and was heading straight for that pillar. The sound of the collision was very different from a normal accident. It was metallic, but also sounded like an ancient bell. I got out of the car and ran to the accident site. Diana was still alive, but she was struggling to breathe. When she opened her eyes, she looked at me. Who are you?" she whispered. I'm just a guard," I said. I knew they would find me." Diana's voice was very weak. I couldn't protect my child. My child." At that moment, the ambulances arrived. But the doctors in the ambulances were not ordinary doctors. Their movements were very mechanical, as if they were following a routine.
When I returned to London from Paris, everything continued as if nothing had happened. In the official reports, Diana's death was described as a tragic accident. Henri Paul was drunk, the paparazzi were aggressively pursuing them, the speed was excessive. Everything made perfect sense on paper, but inside me, a nightmare was growing. Every night I heard Diana's final words, "They were going to find me." 3 weeks later, when I returned to my regular duties at Windsor Castle, Colonel Harrison summoned me to his private office. "Thompson," he said, "have you spoken to anyone about the Paris operation?" "No, sir," I replied. "Very good, because you weren't there that night. Do you understand? You were on duty at Windsor Castle that night. The records prove it." He handed me a thick file. The documents inside indeed showed that I had been there that night. Signatures, camera footage, witness statements, everything was fake, but perfectly fake. "This isn't over yet," Harrison continued. "Diana's death was just the beginning. Now the cleanup operation begins. We must ensure the silence of all the doctors who examined Diana and all the staff who worked with her." He gave me a list. There were at least 20 names on it. Doctors, nurses, laboratory technicians.
"You will visit all of them.
You will remind them that all medical information concerning the royal family is subject to a lifetime confidentiality agreement. If they talk, both they and their families will be in grave danger. One of the names caught my attention, Dr. Gregory Ramos. Next to it was written, "Retired, Cornwall." "Who is Dr. Ramos?" I asked. Harrison's face tensed. "He was the first doctor to examine Diana. He conducted all the genetic tests before her marriage to Charles. He knows a lot, maybe too much. Should I warn him too? No, Ramos is a special case. I'll handle him. You deal with the others." The following days were terrifying. I visited the doctors one by one. Most of them already knew what was going on. Those who had performed Diana's pregnancy tests, those who had analyzed her blood samples, they had all been silenced long ago. One of them, Dr. Margaret Wilson, told me something very interesting. "You're the second one," she said. "Another man came before you, an American. He said the same things. When? A week before Diana died, as if he knew everything in advance."
This information struck me like a bolt of lightning. So the operation had begun before Diana's death. All the witnesses had been silenced in advance. 2 weeks later, I went to Cornwall to visit Dr. Ramos. It wasn't an official visit, just personal curiosity. Harrison's special interest in him had raised questions in my mind. Ramos's house was an old building on the edge of a cliff overlooking the sea. When I knocked on the door, an old, tired-looking man opened it. "Dr. Ramos," I said. "I'm Michael Thompson, Royal Guard." The man's face turned pale. "Yes, I was expecting you. Come in." The house was filled with books, but these were not medical books. They were very old, strange books filled with symbols. Ramos led me to his study. "You know, Mr. Thompson, I've known about this day for 30 years, he said. "Which day?" "The day Diana would be killed. The moment she became pregnant, her fate was already sealed." He pulled a thick file from the desk. It was made of red leather with the royal emblem on it. "I've been keeping this file for 30 years. It contains Diana's real medical records. Not just the pregnancy, but the genetic analysis as well."
I opened the file. The documents inside were shocking. Diana's blood tests were very different from normal human values. Some proteins were at levels not found in normal humans. "Diana was not a normal human," said Ramos. "The Spencer family is a very old genetic line. They are descended from the original inhabitants of England, from the first species of mankind." "What do you mean?" "Throughout human history, there have been mixes with different species. The Spencer family is descended from one of those mixes. The royal family, on the other hand, is the product of another mix." He showed me another document. It was Charles's genetic analysis. Charles's blood contains elements not found in any human. His lineage is mixed with visitors who came to Earth. The marriage between Diana and Charles was the union of two different hybrid species. What about William and Harry? They are perfect hybrids, the best mix of human, native, and visitor genes. But when Diana had a child with Dodi, this balance would be disrupted. Ramos pulled another document from the table. It contained very strange symbols.
"This pact,"
he said. "It was signed thousands of years ago. The rule of the earth was shared between visitors and native hybrids. The royal families are the guardians of this pact." How did Diana break this pact? She tried to contaminate the bloodline. By having a child with a human who did not carry visitor genes, she was destroying her own genetic value. This was considered treason under the pact. He pulled out one final document from the file, the medical report from the night of the accident in Paris. Diana's blood values at the moment of her death. "How did you obtain this?" I asked. "I wasn't just a doctor, Mr. Thompson. I was part of the system. As Diana died, the magical properties of her blood were extracted. This blood was mixed with soil during the ritual in the Alma tunnel." "What happened to that blood?" "The pact was renewed. Diana's death was not just a cleansing. She was also a great ritual sacrifice. Her blood strengthened our agreement with the visitors." Ramos's words kept swirling in my head. Diana wasn't just killed, her death had been turned into a religious ceremony. "So, what happens now?" I asked.
Now we wait. William will grow up, ascend the throne. His children will ensure the pact continues. But if he chooses his father's path, what then? Then they will harvest him too, just as they did his mother. As I left Ramos's house, the horror of the truth had fully taken shape in my mind. Diana's death was not just a murder. It was part of the functioning of a very old, very dark system. When I returned to London, I tried to get back to my normal life. But with each passing day, more questions arose in my mind. What Dr. Ramos had told me, what I had seen in Paris, when everything came together, it painted a terrifying picture. A month later, I received an unexpected phone call. The caller identified himself as William Johnson. I had never heard that name before, but his voice was very authoritative and confident. "Mr. Thompson," he said, "I need to have an important conversation with you. Let's meet tomorrow at 3 o'clock at the Athenaeum Club in Mayfair." "Who are you?" I asked. "I am a historical consultant. I work on matters related to the royal family's past. I know you have some questions about the Diana incident." The next day, I went to the Athenaeum Club. It was a very old, very prestigious club. The interior was filled with leather chairs, a fireplace, and old books. William Johnson was waiting for me. He was a middle-aged man, impeccably dressed, but in his eyes there was a deep knowledge and a cold calculation. He looked at me as if he had known me for years. "Michael," he said, "sit down. I have a lot to tell you." There were thick files on the table next to him. Various family names were written on them: Spencer, Windsor, Habsburg, Romanov.
"What are these files?" I asked. "The genetic records of all the royal families of Europe, an analysis of the last 500 years. As you can see, this is not limited to the British royal family." He began opening the files. Inside were genetic analyses, family trees, and maps marked with very strange symbols. "Michael, Dr. Ramos told you about the pact, but he didn't tell you the whole truth. This pact isn't limited to England. It's a global agreement." "What do you mean?" "The major families in America, the cardinals in the Vatican, the oligarchs in Russia, the party leaders in China, they're all part of this system. The real power that governs the world is an invisible network. He showed me another file. Inside were photos of people from institutions like NASA, the CIA, MI6, and Mossad. These people too? Of course, intelligence services are the protective mechanisms of this system. When aberrations like Diana emerge, they step in. The men working on the operation in Paris? A multinational team. There were people from the CIA, MI6, even the Vatican's Secret Service. Diana's death wasn't just an English problem. She threatened the entire system.
Johnson pulled a photograph out of the file. It was taken in 1996 at the British Embassy. Many important figures were present. A high-ranking NASA official, a cardinal from the Vatican, the president of a major pharmaceutical company, and, of course, members of the royal family. "Everyone is in this photograph," I said. This was one of our regular meetings. Every 6 months, global leaders gather to assess the situation. Global leaders? Representatives of the world's true owners. They cannot be here physically, but we are like their local managers. Johnson showed me even more peculiar documents. They were very old, as if they were texts from thousands of years ago. "These documents," he said, "show the original agreement. When humanity was still very primitive, the visitors came. They were far more advanced than us, but they couldn't physically exist in our world. Why? The atmosphere, gravity, biological conditions, their natural world is very different. But they formed a symbiosis with us. They gave us technology and knowledge. We provided them with genetic carriers that would allow them to sustain their presence in this world." The royal families? At first, yes, but then the system expanded. Today, all the powerful families in the world are carriers of this hybrid genetics. Johnson pulled another document from the file. It contained a very interesting statistic.
Over the past 20 years, 85% of world leaders have come from these particular bloodlines. U.S. presidents, European royal families, CEOs of major corporations. It can't be a coincidence. Of course not. This system is organized at the highest level. Elections, marriages, even births are planned. Diana's marriage too? Of course. Diana Spencer was a perfect genetic match. The Spencer family carried very old indigenous bloodlines. Mixing with Charles's visitor genetics would create perfect hybrids. William and Harry. Yes, they are the system's masterpieces. Especially William. When he ascends the throne, the pact will become much stronger. Johnson opened the last file. It contained childhood photos of William, but these were not ordinary family photos. They were medical examination photos. "We've been monitoring William since birth. His development is crucial for the future of the pact." What kind of development? His mental capacity is far higher than that of ordinary humans. He has telepathic abilities. In some cases, he can foresee the future. This was astonishing. Does William have superpowers? You could say that, but he hasn't learned to control them yet. Our task is to teach him how to use these abilities. Did Diana know about these abilities? Johnson's face darkened. Diana had discovered a lot. She had realized that William was extraordinary. This made him even more dangerous.
Why? Because he was trying to protect William from this system. He wanted to raise William as a normal child. That was unacceptable from the Pact's point of view. Johnson stood up. "Michael, I'm going to make you a very important offer. You can learn everything about this system. You can become one of us, but there is a price. What is it? You will never share what you see or learn with anyone, and when necessary, you will work for us. I understood how dangerous this offer was, but at the same time, I had the chance to learn the whole truth. Do I have time to think? Of course, but don't think too much. This train only comes once, Michael. As I parted ways with Johnson, my mind was in turmoil. Was it better to become part of this system or to run away? But it was already too late. I had learned too much. There was no going back to normal life now.
I gave myself a week to think about Johnson's offer. But during that week, strange things began to happen. I started hearing strange noises in my house. There was abnormal static on my phone. I felt like I was being watched all the time. On the fourth night, when I returned home, my door was open. When I entered, there were 3 men sitting in my living room. I didn't recognize them, but they were all wearing dark suits. "Mr. Thompson," one of them said, "your time to decide is up." "I'm still thinking," I said. "You no longer have the luxury of thinking. You will either join us or—" He didn't finish his sentence, but I understood what he meant. "All right, I accept," I said. The next day, they took me to a very special place. Beneath London, much deeper than the subway, there was a secret facility that didn't appear on any map. It felt like a different world. The corridors were very long, and the walls were covered with symbols I didn't understand. These symbols were the same as the ones I had seen in the books at Dr. Ramos's house, but these were much more complex and much brighter. It was as if they were emitting their own light.
They took me to a large hall. In the middle of the hall was a huge table. On the table, a very large hologram was rotating. This hologram was a map of the world. But it wasn't a normal map of the world. Thousands of dots were flashing on it. "What are these dots?" I asked. William Johnson came over to me. "Each dot represents a hybrid family. The red dots are active families, and the blue dots are inactive ones." When I looked closer at the map, I was amazed. There were hundreds of dots in almost every country. In America, China, Russia, Europe. "Are there really that many?" I asked. "Michael, this system is much larger than you think. There are approximately 10,000 hybrid families in the world. Most of them are unaware of their situation." He showed me another screen. On this screen were leaders from various countries, U.S. presidents, Chinese leaders, Russian oligarchs. "Are all of them hybrids?" "Almost every leader who has come to power in the last 200 years is either directly hybrid or married to someone from a hybrid family." On the other side of the room were very large computers. Data was constantly flowing across the screens. DNA analyses, blood test results, genetic maps. "We monitor them constantly," Johnson said. "We track every member of every hybrid family, from birth to death." Was Diana being monitored too? Diana was a special case. She wasn't the first hybrid to try to leave the system. Throughout its history, there had been such rebels. But Diana's situation was different. What was different about it? She wasn't just rebelling for herself. She was trying to protect William from the system. That was unacceptable. They took me to another room. This room was much smaller and much more unsettling. On the walls were photographs of various people. Below them were their dates of death. Who were these people? I asked. Hybrids who tried to leave the system. Over the past century, a total of 300 people have been eliminated. I looked more closely at the photos. There were names I recognized among them. Famous politicians, artists, businessmen. Were they all assassinated? We use various methods: accidents, heart attacks, cancer, suicide. We choose the most appropriate method for each situation.
A photograph caught my eye. It was of a very young woman who looked a lot like Diana. "Who is this?" Johnson's face tensed. Diana's sister, Lady Sarah Spencer. She also tried to rebel against the system. "What happened to her?" "Car accident, 1989. A very sad loss." My stomach churned. So Diana wasn't alone. Everyone who defied the system was being killed. What about William? William is very important. He will be the leader of the next generation. His children will initiate the next phase of the pact. What is the next phase? Johnson showed me a larger screen. It had very complex graphs on it. The hybrid population is increasing with each generation. According to our calculations, by 2050, 10% of the world's population will be hybrid. Then the time to come out will come.
Reveal ourselves? We will no longer hide. Humanity will learn of the visitor's existence. The hybrid leaders will take over openly. This plan was terrifying. So this secret government, which had been in place for thousands of years, was now preparing to reveal itself. Will people accept this? They won't have a choice. By then, the hybrid population will have grown too powerful. Resistance will be short-lived. Johnson took me back to that large hall. On the hologram map, many more points were now flickering. "A new generation of hybrids is being born," he said. "William's children, Harry's children. They will be much stronger." What kind of powers? Telepathic communication, precognition, even the ability to manipulate matter. They will far exceed human capabilities. In one corner of the hall was a very strange machine. It had very bright lights on it and was constantly humming. What is that? A communication device. We use it to connect with visitors. Can you talk to them? Only certain hybrid leaders, like William Johnson, very high-level hybrids. At that moment, I noticed that Johnson's eyes were glowing in an unusual way. It was as if they were emitting an inner light.
"Are you a hybrid too?" I asked. "I'm a third-generation hybrid. My grandfather and mother were hybrids. My capacity is much greater than that of ordinary humans." "Did you make the decision to kill Diana?" Johnson's face was as cold as ice. "I'm just following orders. The decision is made at a much higher level." "Higher level?" "The visitors themselves. They don't allow any hybrid to break the pact." When I returned home that night, my mind was completely confused. What I had thought was just a murder was part of a much larger and more terrifying system. And now I was part of that system too.
The first few months after joining the system were very difficult. The tasks I was given were innocent at first: tracking certain individuals, preparing reports, collecting genetic data. But over time, things started to take a much darker turn. One morning, William Johnson summoned me to the secret facility. This time, the atmosphere in the room was much more tense. On the hologram map, several red dots were flashing. "Michael," Johnson said, "there's a new situation. We've identified some individuals who pose a potential threat to the system." "Who are they?" "After Diana's death, some people started asking questions. Doctors, journalists, even some royal staff. They were getting very close to discovering the truth." He gave me a list. There were 5 names on it. Among them was Dr. Margaret Wilson, one of the doctors who had examined Diana. "What will be done to these people?" "First, they will be persuaded. If they refuse to be persuaded, other methods will be used." My first target was Dr. Wilson. I visited her at her home. When she opened the door, she looked very frightened.
"I've seen you before," he said. "You're the one with questions about Diana. Dr. Wilson, I need to talk to you about something serious." He took me into his home. The living room was filled with books, most of them medical books, but there were also newspaper clippings about Diana among them. "Doctor, we know you've been doing some research since Diana's death." "I'm just a doctor. I noticed inconsistencies in the death reports." "What kind of inconsistencies?" Wilson showed me a thick file. It contained documents leaked from the hospital in Paris. Diana's blood values were very strange. There were proteins that shouldn't be present in a normal person, and the cause of death wasn't consistent with the accident. "What do you mean?" "Diana was already dead before the accident. According to the blood analysis, a very powerful poison had been administered to her body." This information was very surprising. It didn't align with what I had seen in Paris. "Who did you share these documents with?" "No one. Yet. But I'll be releasing them to the press soon." Those words were Dr. Wilson's death sentence. "Doctor, let me give you some advice. Forget about these documents. Go back to your normal life." "That's impossible. What was done to Diana is horrific. The world needs to know." The next night, Dr. Wilson was found dead in his home. The official report stated he had died of a heart attack, but I knew the truth. My second target was journalist Jonathan Castillo. He was a renowned reporter who investigated corporate corruption. But lately, he had been gathering clues related to Diana's death. I visited him at his office in London. He was a very intelligent and observant man. He became suspicious as soon as he saw me. "Who are you?" he asked. "I'm a consultant. I'm interested in your research on Diana." "What research? I've never written an article about Diana." "But you're planning to write one soon. We have some information." Castillo stood up. "Get out of here. I don't know you." But it was too late. He had already learned too much. During his research, he had discovered the strange medical examinations Diana had undergone before her marriage. He had even found Dr. Ramos's trail. 3 days later, Castillo was involved in a car accident while traveling. He lost control of the vehicle, which plunged into a river, and he drowned. But I knew the car had been sabotaged. My third target was even more challenging. This person was Sarah Mitchell, one of Diana's personal secretaries. She knew a lot about Diana's private life and had been letting things slip lately. I met Sarah at a cafe. She was a young, beautiful woman, but there was a deep fear in her eyes. "Mr. Thompson, I don't know you, but I'm suspicious of you." "Why?" "Because after Diana's death, the people close to her began to disappear, one by one." This was a very careful observation. What Sarah had noticed was our cleanup operation. "What did Diana tell you about you?" I asked. "A lot. She had become very paranoid in her final days. She kept saying she was being followed and her phones were being tapped." "Anything else?" "She was very worried about William and Harry. She said they weren't growing up like normal children. William, in particular, was sometimes acting very strangely." "What kind of strange behavior?" "He claimed to know what would happen in the future. Sometimes he could read people's thoughts. Diana was very disturbed by this." What Sarah was telling me confirmed what I had learned at the facility. William was indeed a hybrid with superpowers. "Did you share this information with anyone?" "No, but I'm going to write a book soon. I'll tell Diana's real story." Sarah Mitchell died 2 weeks later from carbon monoxide poisoning at her home. An accident report was filed, but I knew the truth. As these operations continued, I felt a tremendous sense of guilt. I was helping to kill innocent people, but it was too late. I had no chance of leaving the system. One day, Johnson gave me the most difficult task.
Michael, do you know someone named Joseph Harris? I froze when I heard that name. Joseph Harris was the brother of the screenwriter who was researching Diana. What do you know about him? He got some really dangerous info from his brother. That info makes him a huge threat. What info? His brother sent him Dr. Ramos's USB drive. Joseph Harris now has access to all of Diana's medical records. This was very bad. If this information leaked to the press, the entire system would be at risk. Are you going to do the same thing to him? Joseph Harris is a different case. He is very cautious. He doesn't trust anyone. It will be very difficult to catch him. What are you planning to do? We'll force him to flee. We'll make him change his identity and go to another country. That way, he'll be quiet and out of our hands. What kind of plan is that? It's very simple. We'll scare him so much that he'll disappear on his own. This plan was very clever. Instead of killing Joseph Harris, they were sending him into exile. This way, the threat would be eliminated, and there would be no suspicious death. But what scared me the most was how perfectly the system worked. They were an organization that had found solutions to every kind of threat, and I was now a part of that organization. After working within the system for 2 years, I was beginning to understand the true dimensions of the business. Diana's murder was just the beginning. The system had to constantly renew and strengthen itself, and for that it needed new bloodlines, new hybrids. One autumn morning, Johnson summoned me urgently to the secret facility. There I encountered new people I had never seen before. They were Americans and appeared to be high-ranking officials. "Michael," Johnson said, "I have an important announcement to make. Our new candidate has been selected." On the hologram map, a red dot was flashing in the north of England. "Who is this?" I asked. "Emma Catherine Stewart, 22 years old. She's studying at university in Edinburgh. She's trying to become an art historian." A photo of a young woman appeared on the screen. She bore a striking resemblance to Diana. The same blue eyes, the same golden hair. Is she also from the Spencer family? No,
but from an even older bloodline. The Stuart family traces its roots to the indigenous peoples of Scotland. Their genetics are even purer than the Spencers.
One of the Americans stepped forward. "We've been doing Emma's blood tests for 3 months. Her genetic compatibility is 97%. Diana's was only 83%. This was very surprising. Does Emma know this? Of course not. She thinks she's living a normal life. But for the past 6 months, plans have been carefully laid to introduce her to William." Other images appeared on the screen. Photos from Emma's daily life, at university, at a cafe, with her friends. How are you monitoring her? We have agents in Emma's inner circle. Her roommate, her closest friend, even her boyfriend are under our control. This was very frightening. So Emma's entire life had been organized for years. Does William know about this? Johnson smiled. William is a very intelligent young man. He has also begun to understand his role. After Diana's death, we had long conversations with him. What kind of conversations? We explained to William why his mother was killed, the importance of the pact, his responsibilities. He is now a willing part of the system. This was shocking. William was collaborating with his mother's killers. Does William not think about avenging his mother? Michael, William is a hybrid. He thinks very differently from normal humans. For him, individual emotions are less important than the survival of the species. The American man continued. William's telepathic abilities have greatly improved. He can now communicate directly with visitors. He understands their desires. What do they want? Much faster progress. The 2050 plan is too slow. They plan to reveal themselves in 2030. This was too early. Humanity wasn't ready for such a sudden change. How will people react? There will be resistance at first, of course, but the hybrid leaders will be very powerful. Breaking the resistance won't be too difficult. Johnson showed me another screen. It had very strange shapes on it. They looked like city plans, but they didn't resemble any city. What are these? City plans for the new world order. Hybrids will be placed at the center, and ordinary people will be placed on the outskirts. There will be completely separate living areas. That's like apartheid. No, it's much more advanced. Normal people will be a working class serving the hybrids, but they will also be protected. The system won't function without them. This was a terrifying vision of the future. The enslavement of humanity was being planned.
What is Emma's role in this plan? Emma will be William's wife. Their children will initiate the final stage of the pact. What is the final stage? The American man replied in a very cold voice. Complete transformation. There will no longer be a distinction between hybrids and normal humans. The entire world population will be transformed through controlled genetic intervention. What does that mean? Everyone's hybrid genes will be activated. This way, the visitors will be able to control the world through every human being. Johnson continued, Michael, your new task will be to protect Emma. She is a very valuable asset. She must not be harmed. But won't Emma be able to make choices with her free will? Free will is an illusion, Michael. Emma's fate was determined the moment she was born. Even if she doesn't know it, she has been preparing for this role her entire life. As I left the facility, my mind was in turmoil. Diana's story was repeating itself. Another innocent life was being made part of this horrific pact. That night at home, I felt deeply saddened as I reviewed Emma's file. She was a young, beautiful, intelligent girl. She was studying art history, painting, and dreaming of all the things a normal young person would dream of. But she didn't yet know that a horrific future had been planned for her.
The file contained thousands of photographs taken of Emma since childhood. It appeared that they had been monitoring her since birth. Even her family was unaware of this. The most alarming aspect was Emma's blood tests. Her blood contained highly unusual proteins, even more so than Diana's. Emma was indeed a very powerful hybrid. However, there was a peculiar note at the end of the file. It said that Emma sometimes had strange dreams. In these dreams, strangers told her about things that would happen in the future. The subject exhibits precognitive abilities, the report said. Her ability to see the future may surpass William's. Emma wasn't just a hybrid. She was a very powerful mutant who could see the future. And this power made her even more valuable to the system. But it also made her much more dangerous. If Emma could see the future, she might try to change her own destiny, just like Diana had done. And I had been assigned the task of protecting this innocent young woman. But who was I protecting her from? Or was I protecting her from herself?
When my mission to protect Emma began, 3 years had passed since Diana's death. Much had changed in those 3 years. I was no longer a loyal agent of the system. A rebellion was growing inside me, becoming increasingly unbearable. When I began following Emma in Edinburgh, I saw much more in her than I had seen in Diana. It wasn't just her beauty or intelligence. She had a very deep, intuitive power. It was as if she could sense the game being played around her. One day, while I was studying her in the university library, she suddenly turned to me and looked straight into my eyes. It was impossible for her to notice me from that distance, but it was as if she knew exactly where I was. The next day, something even more surprising happened. Emma, for no apparent reason, suddenly decided to leave Edinburgh and come to London. She said she would stay with family friends, but the real reason was different. As I followed her, I saw her go to a very strange place. It was an old bookstore in the back alleys of the British Museum. Emma went inside and stayed for hours. The owner of the bookstore was an old man. After Emma left, I approached him. "What was that young lady looking for?" I asked. "Very strange things," said the old man. "Books about the Spencer family tree, the history of Old English noble families, even royal genetics."
My heart stopped. Emma was doing research. Like Diana, she had begun to discover the truth. That night, I called Johnson. "Emma is suspicious," I said. "What kind of suspicions?" "She's researching her own family history. She's gathering information about the Spencer family." There was panic in Johnson's voice. "This is bad. Emma isn't ready yet. We needed to wait at least 6 more months before she met William. What are we going to do?" "We'll speed up the plan. We need to introduce Emma to William before her suspicions deepen." 2 days later, a very organized coincidence occurred. Emma
ran into William at an art gallery in London. Of course, this was no coincidence. Everything had been planned down to the smallest detail. Watching them from a distance, I saw the chemistry between them. William was very charismatic, and Emma seemed captivated by his charm. But there was a cold calculation in William's eyes. He wasn't truly in love with Emma. He was just fulfilling his duty. After their first meeting, Emma's behavior changed. She became more reserved, more thoughtful. It was as if she had big questions swirling in her mind. A week later, Emma did something truly surprising. She came straight to where I was standing. I had no idea how she knew I was following her.
"Why are you following me?" she asked. "I don't know you," I said. "That's a lie. I've seen you everywhere for the past 3 weeks. Either you're a cop or something else." There was deep fear in Emma's eyes, but also a strong determination. "Is there somewhere we can talk in private?" she asked. It was very dangerous, but I had no other choice. I took her to a nearby park. "Emma," I said, "I don't want to hurt you, but there are very dangerous things going on around you." "What kind of dangerous things?" "You won't believe me, but your life is being planned. The people you meet, the places you go, even the person you fall in love with, none of it is a coincidence." Emma's face paled. "Are you talking about William?" "Yes, William meeting you was arranged. You're part of a plan." "What plan?" At that moment, I made a very difficult decision. I decided to tell Emma everything. Diana's story, the pact, the hybrids, the secret organization. I told her everything. As Emma listened, fear grew in her eyes. But she also said that my stories sounded familiar to her. "I've seen this story in my dreams before," she said. "Always the same dream. A princess is killed, and then I take her place." "Emma, you have very powerful abilities. You can see what will happen in the future." "What can I do?" "Run, right now. Change your identity. Go to another country."
But Emma's response was surprising. "I can't escape. If I do, they'll find someone else. Another innocent young girl will suffer this cruelty in my place. Emma, you have to save yourself." "No, I have to break this cycle. Diana couldn't escape, but maybe I can." Emma's decision was very noble, but also very dangerous. "What do you plan to do?" "I'll gain William's trust. I'll pretend to be part of the system, but from the inside, I'll discover the system's weaknesses." It was a very risky plan, but there was no other option. In the following months, Emma's relationship with William deepened. They got engaged and wedding plans were made. But I knew Emma's true plan. She was trying to communicate with the visitors using William's telepathic powers. Her goal was to negotiate directly with them. But the system was too powerful. Emma's plans were discovered by Johnson. "Michael," Johnson said one day, "Emma is very dangerous. We need to stop her." "What will you do?" "The same thing, just like we did with Diana." That night, I called Emma. "Run," I said, "right now. They're planning to do the same thing to you that they did to Diana." There was no fear in Emma's voice, only a deep sense of peace. "I know, Michael. I'm ready to." "What do you mean?" "I'm not going to run, but I'm not going to let them succeed either." Emma was found dead the next morning. The official report said it was suicide, but only I knew the truth. Emma had chosen to end her own life
rather than let the system harm her. It was her final act of resistance. After her death, I decided to flee as well. I realized I could no longer be a part of this system. I hid for years, changed my identity, but they never gave up. They're still searching for me. Now, by telling this story, I'm playing my last card. Perhaps these words can save future Emmas. Perhaps someone will take action to stop this horrific system. Diana's death was just the beginning. Emma's death isn't the end either. This system continues and seeks new victims. Now I am addressing you. If strange things are happening around you, if there are too many coincidences in your life, if strangers are behaving too familiarly toward you, be careful, because perhaps you too are part of a plan. And if so, remember Emma's courage. She was able to stand up to the system.
As I conclude this story, my only wish is that Emma's death will not be in vain. May her courage inspire others. Diana's blood was spilled in the Alma Tunnel. Emma's blood was shed silently. But perhaps one day, this bloody pact will come to an end. Until that day, be careful, because they are still among us. They are still making their plans, and they are still searching for new victims.